Welcome to week three in sport management and management 301, facility and event management. This week, we're going to talk a little bit more about revenues and how revenues are generated through the facility. It's a little shorter this week on the lecture as well as the video probably, because you're going to be concentrating on that first case that's up in this week. So you've got a case due this week to take a look at a couple of things and really take a look at a real life situation. So we're just looking at chapter 6 this week. So when we take a look at there we go. Got my slides change here. There we go. If we take a look at a couple of things that play into this aspect of revenue generation. And what are the first thing we look at are the financial goals of public and private facilities. So what is the goal of facility? In public facilities, most of the time it's to make money these days, but they may also have some combination of private and public, which makes that ownership structure a little bit different. So you do want to make money, but at the same time, you may not be generating as much. And the mission may be different. Some facilities are not there necessarily to make a profit or run by nonprofit organizations. Not too many in pro sports, but there are some of those facilities out there. For instance, I can give you one public facility in Jacksonville, the Equestrian Center that is there. Part of their mission statement is not necessarily to make money, but their mission statement is to provide services. So that is a different financial goal. So the goal of any manager is to generate revenues and limit expenses. That's the basic fundamental of management. So we want to increase revenue and decrease expenses if we can. Consistent financial losses are unsustainable for private organizations, but they're also unsustainable for public organizations. When you have to dip into tax dollars, that's not always such a good idea. And people don't like, taxpayers don't like dipping in to pay for what they will view as poor management. So you've got to really look to manage both of these aspects in the event management and facility management aspect. And in the facility aspect, which is really kind of where we're going to look at this is a holistic, not necessarily on the event side per se. But you can boil this down to the event, most definitely, because each event needs to make money, and then the facility makes money. So what we do is we kind of look at things, tickets, and how we sell those tickets. Obviously most of them are all reserved seats these days, but you look at season ticket holders or the mini plan, which is what some of these are now called, where you can buy a 3-game package. You don't want to buy the entire season, but you might want to go ahead and buy 3 games. And usually they offer typically one in most of the strategies I've seen is one really popular game and a couple of not so popular games in the package to drive seating, obviously, and spectator participation. Also, the selling of clubs, suites, front row, backstage tickets. All those are classified as premium tickets. And then who handles the third-party resale? You handle that in-house. A lot of organizations do that now. They do their own reselling, so they can make that percentages off of those. Luxury suites and club seating also carry a large premium, and they're also now adding things. For instance, the Charlotte Stadium has a couple of ground level suites, and what I would call clubs or mini suites, where there's like a meeting area for your group, and then there's a common bar area and a common food area that you can partake in. There's also a sports bar which leads right out onto right into the boxes on the sidelines, primarily for soccer, but I do know they use them for at least the one in the end zone for football as well. But those are really high dollar. Those are even more high dollar seats. So you've got this aspect of people wanting to entertain right on on there, which generates revenue for you. Parking, generating revenue through parking. You've got general parking, which typically is a little further away. Premium parking's up front. Sometimes they'll include that parking in with the premium package, but I guarantee suites or whatever. But I guarantee they're paying for it. So the closer you are, the higher your premium. The more premium the parking is, the more you're paying. This aspect of tailgating, definitely is a little tailgating is definitely a lot of it's in what I call college games. And I know in my experience in Jacksonville, the largest cocktail party of the Florida Georgia game, tailgating spots went for huge premiums as you got closer to the as you were close to the stadium. So we used to call it Trailer City, which is a couple of lots that were dedicated to that across the way, but they paid some pretty high dollars for that. Um, Another would be licensed merchandise, both for the facility and the teams that, or some co-branded stuff that could be sold. Sponsorships, huge ones, and you'll get into sponsorships a lot in your marketing aspect of it. The aspects of naming rights, where you're talking about clubs. For instance, I know in Jacksonville, there's the Crown Royal Club, there's the Budweiser End Zone, with the Budweiser fan zone. Okay. Because Budweiser is a big sponsor. It's also the naming rights of the building itself. Okay. Usually that doesn't go towards the team, that will actually go towards the city. So those naming rights to the facility are definitely, TIA Bank Field, and or AT&T Stadium or SoFi Stadium. Okay, those are definitely large volume deals, usually multi-year deals with the city entities. Also, private label concession stands. Typically, those are typically they will buy into those. Media rights, television rights are a huge thing, although most of those go to the team, but some of those can go to the facility as well. Facility rentals, which is where you sell rent the facilities out. We used to rent party tents out for tailgating, for groups. So those would be extra rentals and extra revenue. Concessions is a huge revenue source. Now guided almost solely by data analytics and what sells. Private stands and private label stands were, for instance, Outback Steakhouse has one in the Jacksonville Stadium. There's several others that are out there that, excuse me, that would you just take over the stand. I think it's there's one for Popeyes, or Bojangles inside the Carolina Arena. And now they're bringing in food trucks outside, which you charge a fee for them to service some food outside the event. So you're always looking for extra revenue. Other revenue sources, typically a lot of these are non-generated, having to do with public facilities per se, and municipal facilities, I should say, but user fees and memberships, student fees, donations and grants, revenue streams that are germane to specific facilities. An example of that would be things like college, there would be, college basketball, or maybe there's a rugby tournament that's inside on a soccer field in the field house, or on a college campus. Those are all specific to particular facilities. And an emerging trends within the industry is adapting operations to control costs. And adapting, and basically now facilities are looking at events that they would not normally have. Okay, have had looked at in the past. What can they do to bring people into these buildings? Especially, and you're looking at especially in this area where we're looking towards recession, people do cut back on these things, and there's less of these events to be had. So now, what do you do to bring them in? These are just some typical expenses of facilities. This is by not means an extensive list, but it definitely gives you an overview of what those are. Mortgages or rent, possibly, or also bond repayments comes into that place. You also have maintenance and repairs, typically lots of utility costs, taxes and revenue sharing. So a lot of times you may be paying surcharges, or you may be paying a percentage of revenue to somebody. Then you've got security, grounds maintenance, insurance, personnel, of course, marketing, sales, cost of goods, and labor. Now, going back to the revenue sharing phase, I'll give you an example of revenue sharing. Typically, when I was with the Jaguars got a revenue share. So the city got a cut, and the Jaguars got a cut off the top line of your sales and food. So there's a reason why you're paying $10 for a beer. It's called captive audience, and there's usually a couple of people getting a cut of that, in addition to taxes. So they're looking to make sure that they get their revenue out of this facility one way or another. So before anybody gets paid, typically those revenue sharing dollars come off the top. Now, outsourcing, many of them now have gone to outsourcing operations, and it's been an aspect for a long time. And the reason why I use outsourcing is basically public facilities don't have a lot of the expertise that is needed to run these and manage these facilities. So a lot of them just go ahead and they sub it out to a management contract, because they can increase revenue and save costs because they're in the business. Okay. Same with concessions and catering and parking, security. Typically on large facilities, there's not many people in the city that have that type of expansion of understanding how to run those aspects. Also, there's legal considerations. The negligence piece of the liability, which we'll look at in a week or two here, it minimizes that a little bit because that shifts some of the legal obligations away from the city or municipality, the public entity, onto the private company. The execution of the contractors does reflect positive or negative on the end of the facility, and that you definitely know that. Privatization, okay, when public home facilities outsources some or all of its functions to an outside vendor, okay, that's really what you're looking at. And you're looking for effectiveness and efficiency when you do that. These are some of the larger operating companies. The first four they're a complete package. That means they do food as well as building management. Okay, so all of those have a food component with it. So they, typically when you get the building, you get the concessionaire as well. The others are AEG Live or Live Nation, are both promoters, where they outsource the marketing aspects of it. Typically, they don't market when they come in with a concert; they market themselves. Allied Barton is a security company, so CSC, SAFE, both of those are security companies at different levels. And they can provide different levels of security. Allied Barton typically is a unarmed, typically internal security company, which is a massive